Right, so I just thought I'd talk about four of the main murmurs: mitral stenosis, mitral regurg, aortic stenosis, and aortic regurg. Your mitral stenosis is going to be a mid-diastolic, low-pitch rumble. Diastole is when the atria fill the ventricles. Okay, so if your atrioventricular valve is stenosed, you're going to get a mid-diastolic rumble as it's badly leaking and it's not as good. So after S2, when diastole can begin, so lub, dub, and then you hear a rumble. You'll hear a loud S1 clicking sound because S1 is the closure of the AV valves. You'll hear that for that reason, okay? Because when you're closing the atrioventricular valves, it takes a lot of force to close a stenosed, narrowy, crappy valve, basically. So mitral regurgitation is obviously a little bit different. This is a pansystolic, really loud noise that you'll hear over the mitral region, okay? And that's because when you have the massive hole in the atrioventricular orifice there, during systole, it's pansystolic, blood is whooshing up from the left ventricle to get into the aortic orifice, right? But there's a second orifice that shouldn't be there because of mitral regurgitation. So when you're hearing, you're going to hear a loud pansystolic sound as the atria are being refilled by the ventricles. Okay, so a pansystolic, high-pitched sound whilst radiating to the axilla. Okay. So, so then we come to aortic stenosis. Now, your aortic stenosis is, so think about it. So what we have is what we call an ejection systolic crescendo decrescendo pattern. This is the most common one that you will see, aortic stenosis. So ejection systolic crescendo decrescendo is now just the second language to you. It's something you just need to know. Aortic stenosis. This ejection systolic thing is systolic, so it's between S1 and 2, it's between lub-dub, so it's a murmur you're hearing between lub-dub, okay? And if you're hearing it between this time, then it's telling you that as the blood from the left ventricle is pushing up against the narrowed aortic orifice, it's pushing through, at the start and at the end, the velocity fades in and out. So as it's starting to get contracted, the velocity rises, and at the end of systole, the velocity falls. So all that waveform is, the crescendo, the noise goes up halfway through systole and then drops off. And then we come to aortic regurgitation. So aortic regurgitation is associated with what's called Corrigan's pulse or a collapsing pulse, okay, which we've done to death. You can do with carotid, you can do with radials. It's because immediately you get an early diastolic low-pitched rumble. So S1, lub, dub, and then a low-pitched rumble almost straight away because the aorta can't close. The aortic valve can't close properly. So blood is dripping back in. So your carotid pulse collapses in early diastole. Your radial pulses collapse in early diastole, and you hear this rumble in that time period. So I've drawn the waveforms. This is mitral stenosis, okay? So we'll quickly recap them super quick. So mitral stenosis is your clicking of an S1 because the mitral stenosis, the valves are crap. It takes a lot of force to get those really stiff valves to close. So when they do close, they close with a vengeance. So S1, a really loud click. Then nothing through systole. S2, the aortic valve's fine, it closes as normal, but then you start to hear a mid-diastolic rumbling sound. What's going on here? Well, we said it's mitral stenosis, right? So that means that in this diastole phase, this filling phase where the atria is supposed to, with gravity and with a bit of contraction, flow into the ventricles, it's struggling to do that because of stenosis. It's struggling. They should be open, but they're not open fully, so you're getting a dribble through. So you're going to hear a mid-diastolic noise. This is mitral regurgitation. So remember, we have the orifice for the aorta, but we now have an orifice for the atrium as well. So the left ventricle contracts, boom, And through the systolic phase between S1 and 2, this is the systolic phase, this is the diastolic phase. In the systolic phase, blood is just whooshing through that atrioventricular orifice. So you get a very loud pansystolic murmur, and that is your mitral regurg. Here's our crescendo-decrescendo pattern of the ejection systolic murmur associated with aortic stenosis. So the blood is accelerating and hitting that stenosed aortic valve, accelerating, hits peak velocity, and then at the end of systole it starts to decelerate as the pressures change, boom, boom, boom. So we get this crescendo-decrescendo pattern. The final one to know for common ones, so you've got S1, you've got S2, this is aortic regurgitation. So it's an early diastolic low rumbling as the collapsing Corrigan's pulse collapses back through the crappy regurgitating aortic valve back into the left atrium, left ventricle, sorry. And that is a quick recap. All this is pulled from Zero to Finals. So, yep, thank you.